What is happening out there, everyone? How y'all doing? Hope you're having a good night. Figured we'd cap off the weekend here with a little news update. Some things you might have, possibly missed over the weekend. We get busy and things happen. Um, so, picked out a few stories that I think are pretty interesting. One is the supernova story. It's got a really sexy name, SN 2024 GGI. It's a type 2 core collapse supernova. And I gotta be honest, I'm not 100% sure what that means. So I had to look it up. And so what happened is the core collapse supernova occurred in the galaxy NGC 3621 in the constellation Hydra, about 22 million light years from Earth. We first detected it on April 11th, 24 via the ATLAS system, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. Most significantly, astronomers captured the shock breakout phase. And the reason capturing the shock breakout phase is important is because it catches that very moment where the internal explosion of the star broke out through its surface. Which means, as you see up on the screen here, that's going to give astronomers direct insight into the geometry of the explosion, the surrounding material of the star, and the star's final moments. So it's super cool with a lot of the advanced technology and these very powerful telescopes, what we're able to see now. And the fact that we have the systems now that can process the data quickly enough for us to understand what we're looking at. It's all very cool. So basically, they measure the polarization of light across wavelengths, and they determined the breakout shock front was not spherical, but had an olive or football shape with a preferred axis. So this implies that many supernova may have large scale asymmetries, perhaps due to rotation, binary interaction, or densest surrounding material, which influences how the explosion proceeds. So let's take a look here. Some observations of the shape. The explosion's early ejecta had an olive-like geometry, just like we said. And as it exploded and interacted with the circumstellar material, the shape flattened, but retained a symmetry axis. So what it tells us is that stars don't always explode in perfect spheres. The asymmetry is telling us something about how mass was distributed in the star or how the explosion mechanism worked. The rapid follow-up is critical. Many past supernova observations begin days later, by which time the geometry is masked by interactions, obviously, with surrounding material. Observing the shock breakout gives a more clean view of the explosion's original shape and, more importantly, the physics before it gets muddied by the star's outer envelope or the surrounding medium. And what that does ultimately is it's going to improve our understanding of massive star death. Element production like nickel 56, which powers later light curves, and the role of circumstellar material in shaping what we see. And what's cool is this might be something that we're able to see in the sky as far as like an exact date when it's going to happen. They have not released that yet unless I'm missing it. But once I find word, I'll keep my finger on this. And once I hear anything about a date of when we might actually be able to see this in our own sky, even though it's 22 million light years away. It's pretty fascinating stuff here. I'll make this image a little larger, but that's it right there. SN 2024 GGI, the supernova. Interesting stuff. So stay tuned. We will have more on the supernova. I'm actually going to go ahead and share a brief news story on the supernova because, of course, if I'm always for listening to the experts on this. So let's take a listen to one of the experts here. This comes to us from CBS 19. And I really love the local news channels. It seems like, I don't know, they just do a better job in general, I think, than these national news channels a lot of the time. Okay, so let's check this out.
For the first time, scientists are showing us the start of an explosive and fleeting outer space phenomenon. Patrick Cornell shares that story.
Take a look at this fiery cosmic creation. Astronomers say you're seeing the start of a supernova as it breaks through the dying star's surface. Using the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope, yes, that's its real name, researchers spotted a star 22 million light years away mere hours into its demise. As the massive star collapsed, documenting something never seen before, the true shape of the early stage of a supernova. Using a technique called just read that word on the screen. Using it to clue in on the geometry of the explosion, compiling that data to create this artist rendering of the outer space spectacle, ultimately concluding it resembles an olive. Astronomers say this initial supernova stage is very short-lived before becoming a fully enveloped fireball, which is why it's been hard to record until now. The new discovery helps provide valuable insight into the deaths of these massive stars. Back here on Earth, construction workers in California have created a similarly hard-to-spot figure. Do you see it yet? There it is! Crews constructing a new tower at the UC Davis Medical Center have been playing Where's Waldo for the amusement of pediatric patients at 2 nearby children's hospitals who can see the Seek and Find Fun from their windows, moving the character every couple days to try and provide a little joy.
To me, it symbolizes community engagement, just fostering that we're not here just to build a building, we're here to build a legacy.
The team is also donating Where's Waldo books to both children's hospitals for the kids to enjoy. For Take a Look at This, I'm Patrick Cornell.
The cosmos stretches, an endless, silent ocean of dark matter and ancient light. For millennia, humanity has gazed upon this void, searching for answers, seeking the moment of creation itself. But up there, among the silent stars, awaits a violence almost beyond comprehension. In a galaxy 22 million light-years away, a cosmic giant finally surrendered, and we caught it in the act. Using the European Southern Observatory's child-based Very Large Telescope, astronomers for the very first time observed the explosive birth of a supernova almost from its opening act. The doomed star, roughly 15 times the mass of our sun, shed its outer shell in a blaze of energy and gas. But the blast wasn't neat and spherical. It bulged out like a vertical olive, distorted by a massive equatorial disk of gas that had surrounded it for years. This glimpse changes the game in astronomy. Cameras at observatories from Hawaii to Chile recorded the explosion's earliest flashes, catching ultra-bright signals on the edge of detection. Data streamed in real time. In seconds, scientists saw the collapse, the raging heat. A cosmic storm unseen for 13 billion years since the universe was young. Such supernova explosions scatter heavy elements like iron and gold across space. They seed planets and maybe even life itself. Tracking the birth of a supernova unlocks answers to how galaxies evolve, how stars die, and the fate that awaits our own sun. Bureau report. We on, world is one.
How funny is that? Some bragging about the local news. It was terrible. I'm so sorry, y'all. I didn't. I guess I grabbed the wrong clip. I had another local news clip that did a pretty good job on it, and that was weird. It was like a minute about the supernova, and then it started talking about building a building with Where's Waldo characters in it. I don't know. My apologies. However, you saw in that video the massiveness of it, like how it's a type of an explosion like we could not even fathom. We can't fathom in our brains how far 22 million light years away is. Like it's like when you start talking about billions or trillions of dollars. It's kind of beyond what we can really get our heads around, I guess. So the fact that it's that far away and we can get glimpses of that. We could possibly see the light from that 22 million light years away. That is a violent, just insanely energy charged explosion. I mean, it would, like, we probably couldn't produce that with all of the nuclear weaponry that we have on this planet. So it's interesting to think about. I don't think that we have any stars like within our general vicinity. At least they're not telling us about any that could do that here. But boy, think about the massive, because with that explosiveness, you're going to be talking all kinds of frequencies and energy waves and just stuff that we don't even know about yet, because we've just now in 2025, almost 2026, been able to catch a glimpse of one actually happening. All right, on to the next subject. We're going to talk about what the fuck is going on with the Caribbean and Venezuela. So we sent our largest aircraft carrier to the Caribbean, and we are steadily getting bombarded with videos from our Secretary of War of videos blowing up boats that we're told are full of drugs. How do we know that? They told us so. I think it's strange that there isn't more calls for accountability about this. This is something that could very quickly escalate and grow out of control. And when it escalates, it's not these jerks that make these decisions who send their kids to fight. It's us. And it's our kids that go to fight. And damn it, we got the toughest fucking fighting force in the world. You don't want to test us. But they should only be used when they need to be used. I think even Washington General George Washington, our first president, talked about the dangers of having like a standing military. When you have a standing military, they want to find something to do. That's what they do. They fight. So they want to find fights to have. I think Washington and a lot of the founding fathers were more into like local militias. In case we get invaded, the local militia gets together. Now, granted, we're living in a completely different world now than we are then. But I think it's still a valid point that when you have a standing army, when you have a standing military, they're going to be used. Sometimes in the right way, and sometimes they're going to be misused. And we know that. Like, we have a history in this country of fighting just wars and fighting unjust wars. Fighting wars that we had to fight and fighting wars that we probably had no business being in the first place. And everything in between. The whole gamut in our 200 plus years of existence. I served. I was lucky enough to not be hurt, suffer some of the injuries that other people did. But it's a lot, I can tell you that it's a lot easier to swallow when you believe in what you're fighting for. And honestly, when you know what you're fighting for. So I see things like this, declaring a drug cartel a terrorist organization, and not just a drug cartel, drug cartels. Well, who decides what's a drug cartel? I mean, is there some paperwork we don't know about where it's like if they have this many members, if they distribute this much product, if they have this much of a reach? I mean, what's the definition? We don't know. And because of the Patriot Act, once you designate an organization, a terrorist organization, we pretty much have carte blanche. Our military, our intelligence, our law enforcement apparatus can pretty much do whatever the fuck they want to do if they think you're a terrorist. Your rights are not their focus, just to put it lightly. And that's scary shit. You know? What if somebody were to frame you just to make you look like that? And then your whole life gets turned upside down. It's just so crazy. You know, I don't live in Portland now, but I'm from Portland, Oregon. And I remember when they busted that guy, that Middle Eastern kid who they said was going to set off a bomb at Pioneer Square, what we call Portland's living room. And they, I think, had 8 or 9 FBI agents and one kid. They got him in online in some chat group. They got him to agree to do this thing. They provided all the hardware. They said that the van full of bombs was parked at Pioneer Square. They hand the kid the controller. All you got to do is push the button. He pushes the button. He's in prison for life for terrorism. It's like 8 or 9 FBI agents that did that to us. So the question is, like, could he have ever found those resources in real life? Would he have ever gone as far as to find the bomb resources, learn how to set it up, and then all that comes along with that, and avoid detection from law enforcement the entire time and do this himself? I mean, you could argue that till the cows come home. But to spend like 8 or 9 FBI agents' resources, time on this one kid and a fake bomb when you kind of radicalized him to begin with online. God, we just have to be careful about the things we get into. And that Patriot Act, I remember when it passed, I remember thinking, oh, fuck. Like they our intelligence apparatus already had complete control over us if they wanted it. But the Patriot Act just gave them. You ever see The Matrix where there's like the guy that has the keys to the back hallway? And they can like just show up wherever they want. That's like what the Patriot Act did for our intelligence agencies. It's absolutely crazy. All right, this is a Fox News report talking about sending the USS Gerald Ford to the Caribbean. We'll start with the right. I always try to show both sides. We'll start with kind of the right-leaning news coverage and what they have to say about it, and then we'll go over to the more centrist left coverage and see what they have to say about it as well. All right, so this was just yesterday on Fox and Friends Weekend.
Because the Pentagon is launching Operation Southern Spear, which is, of course, going against narco-terrorists in America's neighborhood and shield us from all of these dangerous drugs that are coming forward. Here's President Trump being asked about what he plans to do with this operation.
On Venezuela, I know you can't tell us what your next steps will be, but can you say, have you made up your mind on what you'd like to do for as far as action?
I sort of have made up my mind, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you what it would be, but I sort of made up my mind. We made a lot of progress with Venezuela in terms of stopping drugs from pouring in. But we have a Mexico problem. We have a Colombia problem. We're doing very well. Drugs coming into our country are greatly slowed.
Paul, I was really happy to have you today on the show because very few people in this building know as much about these cartels as you do. People associate you with crime here in New York in the area, but you know a lot about this. What do you think about what President Trump is doing? I'm going to also put up a map here of the military ships that are in position, this armada that's formed. What are your thoughts on what's this operation going to do?
So Venezuela is a very strategic target for America. And I say target cognizantly. As you and I were discussing, Maduro essentially or reportedly offered the entire resources of Venezuela to Donald Trump to leave him alone, and Trump turned them down. I would say that's a little bit of a clue as to what Donald Trump's mysterious mindset is here, right? But Venezuela, you have to remember, their former vice president, the guy who ran their oil industry, which is their only industry, is Hezbollah related, a guy named Tariq al-Assami. Now, he's reportedly arrested or dead when nobody's clear because it's Venezuela. My point is that they occupy a really strategic position in Latin America. They have Middle Eastern ties, China ties.
China's big.
China's big. That's really what's behind the Latin American diplomacy. You and I talk about it all the time. This is, and they're calling it the Monroe Doctrine instead of the Monroe Doctrine, right? This is Donald Trump reasserting American supremacy over our hemisphere and saying, China, hands off. I think most importantly here, or perhaps of significant importance, let me rephrase, Putin and Russia are backing away from this. They have their own problems in Ukraine. They're in no position to support Venezuela. Maduro's a man who's really hung out there by himself. And I think Donald Trump is looking to use Venezuela as a linchpin to begin to reform Latin America. That's the first step.
Absolutely. So talk to me about China, because you're right. Russia has backed off, and so he's a lot more isolated. Is China still protecting Maduro? Is it just in the form of buying their oil? And how much does oil have to do with this? Because it's not just Venezuela. Right next to Venezuela is Guyana, which has had the largest oil discovery, I think, in our lifetime. Yeah, and you know what? The good news here is that Guyana is a comparative friendly. And Guyana has not only oil, they have enormous natural resources. That's very dense jungle. A lot of it hasn't even been explored. Yes. What Guyana managed to do is build a road that they've been trying to build for decades that gets into the hinterland there that will allow some exploitation of those resources. The country needs it. We'd like to buy from them. So that's the good news. China, however, wants it as well. Donald Trump wants China out of the American backyard. China right now, I don't assess, has the ability to project power, military power, the way they would like to here. They're not going to mess around with that kind of stuff. We have our carrier group there. It's more economic warfare relative to China. Donald Trump wants to bring a number of these countries, a number of which are amenable to coming more into the American sphere. Economic cooperation, keep China out, everybody benefits. And a good example of that was Argentina. Argentina was looking to China under Milei. They were starting to get help from them because they needed economic help. President Trump going in and saying, no, we'll be the sugar daddy. get China out.
And Panama, right? Because Panama's
also
pulled out of the Belt and Road Initiative, which
Bolivia
is very
on
significant.
board, and now, as you and I talk about, we'll be talking more about this. President Sheinbaum in Mexico fully exposed for her cartel ties now. Big riots, or I should say demonstrations, happening tomorrow or tonight.
Yeah.
And today in Mexico. So we'll see what happens. The hemisphere is on the move.
The hemisphere is on the move. Mexico is a key player. Those strikes on the boat so far, no Mexicans killed. She doesn't want American intervention militarily on the cartels in Mexico. As you say, she's been exposed. We have big demos coming up. Some of them started yesterday. There's a lot to see in Latin America, and it's fun to talk about.
We got to have you back, Paul. He is on this beat. All right, Paul Morrow, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You got it.
Hey, it's Will Kane.
It's pretty crazy, right? We are looking at, like, there's drug cartels everywhere. I mean, and perhaps that's why we sent, you know, our largest U.S. aircraft carrier to the Caribbean, because they're fucking everywhere. They're Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Africa, Afghanistan. I mean, what? They're everywhere. They run Mexico. So are we going to basically go to war with Mexico? I mean, the president of Mexico can't beat back the drug cartels. We're supposed to do it? You want to send your kids into Mexico to stop the drug cartels? You want to send your kids to Venezuela? Is it worth it? Do you think it's worth it? Do you think that, let's say we go in there and we shut down the current drug trafficking system, global system. Let's say we make a huge dent. Let's say we shut down like 50% of it, would be a huge dent. Do you think that's going to matter? Do you think that the bad guys are going to stop trying to find other ways to do it? Maybe the problem with drugs is that we have a problem with drugs. Call me crazy. I don't know if you can defeat that with a war. Okay, this is more coverage on the aircraft carrier Gerald Ford being sent to the Caribbean here from CBS.
For joining us on this Sunday. We began with a powerful display of American military might and what the Trump administration insists is a counter-drug operation. Today, the world's biggest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, arrived in the Caribbean Sea. It is now also in striking distance of Venezuela. Today, new video of the latest U.S. attack on a small boat suspected of transporting drugs. So far, at least 80 people have been killed. CBS's Charlie D'Agata in San Juan, Puerto Rico, leads us off tonight.
So U.S. officials tell us that the Ford aircraft carrier crossed into the Caribbean this morning along with 3 guided missile destroyers, part of its strike group, just adding to this massive U.S. military buildup not seen here in decades. The largest and most advanced warship in the world is now in America's most active battle zone. On board 4 dozen F-18 fighter jets, along with technology to jam radars on potential bombing runs. In St. Croix, we saw firsthand how the Ford's presence is adding to a buildup of military assets already on patrol in the Caribbean. The USS Lake Erie is a guided missile cruiser. It pulled up to dock here in St. Croix a few days ago to resupply and get the sailors on board some much-needed R&R. While some of the island's residents welcomed visiting sailors and Marines, John and Heidi Driscoll told us the ship's arrival left them feeling unsettled.
Our local businesses can use everything they can, but it still worries me.
Why does it worry you?
I don't know what's going on. The fact that they're here, they're so close to Venezuela, it makes me very nervous. And when you speak to them, they don't know what's going on.
as the U.S. military buildup gathers pace.
Peace, peace, peace.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro used music to try and ease tensions.
Imagine us people.
Back in Puerto Rico, we found a naval station that was shut down in 2004, now fully operational with F-35 stealth fighter jets. So the Trump administration says this is still a drug interdiction operation. They're calling it Operation Southern Spear, but with all this U.S. military hardware in the region, there are plenty of options to widen that operation.
Yeah, and I can tell you that as a force, we don't deploy to hostile regions for fun. All of this is very expensive. The cost of sending that aircraft carrier to the Caribbean, I mean, the fuel alone, you're looking at millions. The resources. What's the cost of an F-22? I think it's like $3 billion? How many F-22s are on that bad boy? How many drones? High level. So, yeah, we don't start moving troops and aircraft carriers into potentially hot regions unless we're typically getting ready to do something. We might say all the other things, like, no, we're not. No, we're just, just normal stuff. Yeah, there's some drug boats coming through, so we've killed 80 people, y'all, on these boats. And I still haven't seen one photo of like the drugs stacked up, How come we can't, if we know where the boats are on video, why can't we just apprehend them? Why are we blowing them up and murdering all those people on board? It's just so strange. All right, so this is another perspective, because I think the more perspectives, the better, right? As long as they're not fucking shills. But so here's another perspective. This is on Bloomberg, which is a channel that you're typically going to watch Bloomberg when you're trying to get, stock tips and things like that. But these folks are very good at predicting future events. That's why they are good at stocks. So let's take a listen here.
What do we know about what's leading up to this report? How did we get to this point in time?
Well, Tyler, we've seen since August this accumulation of U.S. assets in the Southern Caribbean. In early September, we saw the first of these strikes, which have now killed about 75 alleged criminals, alleged drug runners in the Southern Caribbean, and also expanded to the Pacific. And we're seeing just now the aircraft carrier Ford arriving to the Southern Pacific. And so this is the greatest accumulation of assets we've seen at any point in this process that's been going on for several months now. And a lot of speculation. The president has spoken to the idea about whether the cartels need to be hit on land in addition to the boats that have been blown out of the water so far by the U.S. And so a lot of attention on this was with Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday in Canada at the G7 foreign ministers meeting. He said that his counterparts didn't raise this in meetings, but we know that, for instance, the French foreign minister raised questions about the legality of these strikes to the press. And Secretary Rubio responding that they are protecting the U.S., they are protecting the citizens who have seen hundreds of thousands of people killed by fentanyl overdoses in the last number of years, and that these are foreign terrorist organizations, drawing a line saying we're used to people making the argument that to be a terrorist, it needs to be ideological, but that terrorism isn't necessarily ideological, and that this is terrorism in terms of what this has been doing, disrupting so many hundreds of thousands of lives and killing so many people.
You mentioned the idea of potential land attacks, airstrikes. Presumably, the United States has a lot of experience with over-the-horizon operations here. Why would we need the biggest aircraft carrier in our arsenal? The strike group that comes with it means an enormous amount of firepower off the coast of Venezuela. What else would we use it for?
Well, Joe, certainly what analysts have talked about is what this show of force means.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we've seen these kinds of assets deployed in the Western Hemisphere and near South America. But maybe this is something that we should be becoming more used to, given the priority of the Trump administration on the hemisphere and on stopping drugs. Secretary Rubio yesterday talked about the cooperation and that the U.S. is getting from Mexico on the issue of fentanyl. And one of the reasons that these strikes have needed to happen in the Caribbean is because they're not getting similar cooperation from Nicolas Maduro, who he always reminds us the Southern District of New York has declared to be a drug criminal. And therefore, this idea of an illegitimate government in Venezuela doesn't help the U.S. on stopping drugs, unlike, say, on the U.S. southern border in the land with Mexico, where the Sheinbaum administration has been, and that this is something that needs to be addressed with greater firepower, with direct strikes, because in part of the lack of cooperation.
Well, today, Maduro fast-tracked a bill to strengthen the country's defenses. We have a headline on the terminal that Venezuelans are urged to spy on their neighbors as U.S. warship nears. What do we know about how Venezuela has been responding to what's going on in terms of the U.S. moving assets into the region?
Certainly, we've seen Maduro calling up Venezuelan troops and making very public statements about amassing thousands of Venezuelan troops ready to respond. But in fact, Venezuela has a pretty aged capacity in terms of the aircraft that is available to it, and in terms of the capabilities of the Venezuelan army. They certainly have some ability to defend. But when you talk about the kinds of assets and the sophistication and the technical cutting-edge ability of the U.S. assets that have been put in place in the Southern Caribbean in recent months, certainly the Venezuelan capabilities pale in comparison to the U.S. Military.
Yeah, like I was saying, we could fuck you up. I mean, we really can. But what was that they said in Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. And that's certainly true. It's certainly true. We do have the military might to, we can pick a fight with pretty much whoever we want. And I understand wanting to put an end to the drug problem. But I just don't know that that blowing up trafficking. But I mean, it's like this game of tag or hide and go seek. I mean, you're never, as soon as you figure out what they're doing, and it seems like you have, they reference these known trafficking routes and they keep blowing boats up, so they must be confident they have this thing figured out. That just means they're going to figure out another way to get it done. As long as the demand is there, there's going to be people that are going to provide the supply, no matter the cost. And the higher the risk, the higher the cost. But guess what? People will pay it because we're not dealing with the real problem, which is we aren't looking inward, which is the real problem a lot of times. The whole drug thing is a medical issue. It's, in my opinion, it should not be treated as a criminal issue unless you're doing criminal behavior. But drugs are a scourge in this country, and we have to start asking why that is. Why does everybody in this country want to get high? It's something to contemplate, right? Why are we willing to do everything else, including killing people and blowing up boats, but we're not willing to have a real conversation about what's driving all of it, which is our consumption. It's got to be the highest in the world. That's the problem. So aircraft carriers risking American lives, sure, you might put a little dent in things for a while, but it's not going to solve the problem. And we're going to spend way too much money trying to do it. That's my opinion on the matter. Let's move on to some weird shit, okay? Because we know for at least the last several weeks, Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene have kind of been at each other's throats because she wants the Epstein files released, as was promised during Trump's campaign, and Trump does not. The main argument Trump makes for not releasing everything is he thinks that there will be people's names on there who were innocent, that didn't do anything illegal or nefarious, but because their name is on there alone, they're, going to be prosecuted and have to deal with all these issues even though they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I say that's their problem. When you hang out with known pedophiles, that's a risk you take, right? I mean, it's one thing if it's like, oh, this person went and visited him and then realized what was really going on and then never saw them again. But if you're going to tell me like Bill Clinton went out there 15 times or whatever it is because just Epstein's a nice guy, get the fuck out of here. There's no way. There's no way. Multiple visits, in my opinion, equals shady shit was going on. There's a reason they were going out to that island. There's a reason they were spending time at that man's house. And we all know what it is. So the weird thing here is this kind of flip-flop. So this was on Truth Social today, which is 100% a flip-flop. Trump says, as I said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, got a point there, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetuated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory on the Democrat shutdown. The Department of Justice has already turned over tens of thousands of pages to the public on Epstein, are looking at various Democrat operatives, Bill Clinton, Reid Hoffman, Larry Summers, etc., and their relationship to Epstein, and the House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally entitled to. I don't care. I guess he yelled that. All I do care about is that Republicans get back on point, which is the economy, affordability, where we are winning big. Our victory on reducing inflation. What? From the highest level in history to practically nothing? What? Bringing down prices for the American people delivery. Okay, I can't continue to read that because he must not shop where I shop. Where I shop, shit's hella expensive. But I digress. That's getting off the point. It's rather neither here nor there. The crazy thing about this is that after months and months of Trump saying, just let it go. I think at one moment he said, you're stupid if you want to know more about the Epstein stuff. I swear he did. Well, the vote's coming up this Tuesday about releasing additional files. My money is on him finding out the vote was going to get through and those files are coming out. And so you better just get on with the winning team. And whatever, if these things implicate him in any way, then he's just going to, deal with it at that point. He'll provide some kind of defense for whatever reason he's on that flight or in that apartment at that time or whatever. He's got a great legal team, and that's what they'll do. They'll do their job. So we're going to look at a couple of these are stories that happened just this last week between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump, a couple of comments he made this week. And then today he says he wants it all released. It's very interesting. Let's take a look here.
What I've seen, sir, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Congresswoman, was on CBS News. She was talking about how the files should be released. We anticipate that it will happen in the House. I know you've had
Hold on.
About the investigation today.
I don't care about it, released or not. What I think.
Okay, I'm going to start that over and turn it down a little bit because the plane noise is insane. And I have turned on the subtitles here, so hopefully you can read that.
The Congresswoman was on CBS News. She was talking about how the files should be released. We anticipate that it will happen in the House. I know you've had about the investigation today.
I don't care about it, released or not. What I think you should do, if you're going to do it, then you have to go into Epstein's friends. This Reid Hoffman spent a lot of time on the island. I was never on his island. Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times. You're going to have to look into his friends because, if they're going to do that. And I think the perfect guy to do it would be Southern District, somebody like Jay Clinton. I understand that's who's been assigned.
But does the Congresswoman have a point, though?
Does Marjorie Taylor Greene have a point?
Does she have a point?
I know nothing about her.
What if she's supposed? All the files.
Well, they can have whatever they want. They already do. I think they have 50,000 pages already. Look, this is a Democrat hoax. This is a hoax put out by the Democrat, and a couple of few Republicans have gone along with it because they're weak and ineffective. But this is a Democrat hoax to get away from the fact that they just lost the shutdown, and they've lost the elections. They've lost the big election, to me, in a record number. They lost the popular vote. They lost the swing states. They lost everything. I think it was 312 to 220 something. So this is a way of not talking about that. It's a hoax. This is no different than Russia. And it's headed up by Democrats and some very weak Republicans.
I was just wondering if you have a timeline for when you might release more of those files.
Which ones?
Democrats to Epstein.
Well, I don't know about those files. I know nothing about it, but I understand they released like 40 or 50,000 pages already. Okay. And nobody. I will say this: if they had anything, they would have used it before the election. Okay? I can't tell you what they put in since the election, but if they had anything, you don't think they would have used it before the election? They would have gladly used it before the election.
So speaking of the election, why were you or why was your team encouraging Congresswoman Bober and Congresswoman Mace to not pursue?
Because we think it's bad to talk about it because it gets away from the subject of how well the Republicans are doing. We have the greatest economy. We have the largest investment ever made in our country's history. We have all of these great things happening. We have very little inflation, whereas he had record-setting, the biggest inflation in history. All of these things are good. And when you talk about the Epstein hoax, what happens is you're not talking about how well we've done.
Mr. President,
that's the whole purpose behind them. They want to waste people's time, and some of the dumber Republicans like that.
Mr. President, on that subject, are we going to see...
It's mostly Democrats.
Are we going to see more domestic travel from you to try to sell that message? Are we going to see some rallies?
Domestic travel?
Yeah.
Well, I want to spend time here. I just got back from a big trip, a very successful trip with China and with, all the countries. I saw many countries over there. We stopped in Malaysia, Japan, South Korea. It was a phenomenal trip. We had a great meeting with President Xi, who's, a great leader, great country, actually, whether you like it or not. And China is a great country, amazing place. And Japan, amazing place. We stopped in tremendous countries with tremendous leaders, and we did really well. We brought back trillions of dollars in trade and other things. But someone like
Majority Leader Scalise, it has been a while since President Trump dished out one of his signature nicknames. One of your members, Marjorie Taylor Greene, just got two, Marjorie Trader Greene and Marjorie Taylor Brown, because the president says green grass turns brown when it begins to rot. What's going on with these two?
Well, you can see that they've had some disagreements, and, President Trump from time to time has disagreements with people, and he's not shy to talk about it. And you've seen over time he's made up with some people too. But, one of the things President Trump does is, he tells people what he really thinks, but he also talks about what it's going to take to get this country back on track. And President Trump has done phenomenal things to address the problems that he inherited when Joe Biden was president. We saw so many problems around the world. We had high inflation, high interest rates, high energy costs here at home. And President Trump started day one to fix those problems. And he's not going to slow down. And I know he has disagreements, even with some of his friends along the way, but he's not going to be deterred. He is working tirelessly. You see him in the White House. He'll come from a trip overseas. I saw him the day after he came from the Middle East, signing historic peace agreements in the Middle East, and the next day he's at the White House, continuing to do great things here at home. So this is a president that doesn't rest, doesn't stop fighting for the American people.
And the president has told us that he's mad. Marjorie Taylor Greene voted with Democrats to try to force a vote about releasing more Epstein files. Why do you think it is that your Democratic colleagues were so quiet about Jeffrey Epstein for the entire length of the Biden presidency?
Well, it's a point of hypocrisy that we've brought up many times, Peter. We actually brought a motion for unanimous consent the other day to bring up all the Epstein files. And guess who objected on the House floor? It was Democrats. And so, this idea that the Democrats won it, they hid the Epstein files for 4 years. In fact, some of the things you saw leaked just the other day were things that we House Republicans got out through Jamie Comer's Oversight Committee. We had the estate of Epstein finally subpoenaed, and we released a lot of that data. One of the things it showed, Peter, was a Democrat member of Congress texting with Jeffrey Epstein during a congressional hearing, trying to get Epstein's advice for how to ask questions during a hearing. I don't hear the mainstream media talking about that. That just came out like 2 days ago, and it's because of Republican oversight on those Epstein files that the Democrats sat on for 4 years.
A different subject, but something that everybody watching wants, that would be free money. The White House says $2,000 checks could be on the way. The money would come from tariffs and not the budget. They just need one thing first.
Well, it's something that will require legislation. But if you look at how much tariff revenue has been coming in, then there would actually be enough room to cover those checks and not go into the rest of the budget. So yeah, there would be enough money to pay for the $2,000 checks.
So before the $2,000 checks, they just need your permission in Congress. Are we going to see a vote for these checks?
Well, there's a robust debate over what's going to happen with the tariff revenue. One of the things, Peter, is getting an actual quantification of it, exactly how much money has come in from tariffs. A lot of us don't think it's going to be long term because you see President Trump reaching new trade agreements so that we have lower tariffs, or ultimately zero tariffs is the goal, because you get a fair trade with countries that never used to treat us fairly. So many countries took advantage of us. President Trump finally has those.
Oh man, give me my $2,000. I'm kidding. I want my $2,000. All right, so we're gonna cut away from this for just a moment. This literally just happened a little, maybe 20 minutes ago or so. NASA launched their 6B Sentinel. Let's take a look at the launch here.
LD is go for launch.
We just heard the SpaceX launch director give the final go.
All systems are go.
T-minus 3 seconds.
The range is green. Weather is green. The final seconds of countdown.
minus 15 seconds. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Sentinel 6B.
Sentinel 6B rising, extending nearly 4 decades of the precise sea level record from space.
Falcon 9 booster is currently firing all 9 of those Merlin engines at 190,000 pounds of thrust per engine, and we can hear it, and soon we're going to feel that in our chest. So exciting. After about 50 seconds, those engines will begin throttling down to slow down the vehicle to prepare for max Q. Think of it as kind of like a low-key fire. Max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, is when Falcon 9 will feel the largest structural load of the vehicle that it's going to see during its entire boost phase of flight. Slowing down the vehicle just means that Falcon 9 is going to experience a less load.
Now traveling faster than the speed of sound, preparing for max Q. Now we have a few events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's when SpaceX will shut down all of its 9 engines on the first stage.
Shortly after MECO, stage 2 will separate from the inner stage in the booster. And then the second stage is going to continue on, igniting the Merlin vacuum engine. We're going to hear the call out for that second engine start 1, or SES1. That burn should last just under 6 minutes.
A lot of clouds in the area, so our ground shots not able to pick up that traditional flight into the night sky, but we are looking right down the barrel of the first stage with the onboard camera. Again, the clouds not enough to stop launch, but certainly from a low pressure system in the area.
Main engine cutoff.
Standing by for main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition. Stage 1 boost back startup.
That was a beautiful light up of the second stage, and you're looking now getting ready for the fairings to come off. That's our next big milestone. Confirmed. And there go the fairings. You see now Sentinel-6 exposed to the elements of space. Now soaring towards orbit, another step complete in our ongoing effort to understand Earth's heartbeat through its oceans. We're 50 seconds into the second stage first burn. And now the first stage booster basically hitting the brakes by firing 3 of its 9 engines to reverse course and head back down towards the landing zone.
Pretty fucking cool.
This
Like
burn
I said,
that we're seeing here of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine will last just under 6 minutes. This will take Sentinel-6B to its parking orbit. That's going to be followed by a 45-minute coast where we're just going to allow and rely on orbital mechanics. And
so yeah, pretty fucking cool. Like I said, it was about 20 minutes ago this happened. So not quite live, but pretty close. And yeah, I thought it was. I love this shit. So if this happens live in the middle of what I'm talking about, I'm certainly gonna bring it up, especially on a new show, right? Pretty stinking cool. Okay. So it's interesting. Trump comes out with this Truth Social post and he says he's going to, he's all good for the release of the Epstein files. But then you literally, I'm looking as far as major news outlet goes, couldn't find anything so far. So this is Sky News from Australia covering what Trump had to say today when he posted on Truth Social about, hey, do it, release the Epstein files.
Social calling for the release of the Epstein files and is insisting he has nothing to hide. That's despite the US president's high-profile feud with his now former ally, Marjorie Taylor Greene, calling her, quote, wacky and a traitor. The pair have been trading blows after the Congresswoman backed a push to release Justice Department files linked to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In a post, Mr. Trump says, as I said aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory on the Democrat showdown. Some members of the Republican Party are being used and we can't let that happen. Let's start talking about the Republican Party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap. Despite the feud, she told CNN she still supports Donald Trump's broader agenda, but maintained her push for transparency.
I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files. And I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong. And so I'm standing with the women, and I will continue to do my small part to get the files released.
Ms. Taylor Greene claims the president's attacks could put her at personal risk, but Donald Trump appears to be unfazed by her concerns.
Her life could be in danger because of the rhetoric.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think.
And that's the first I've heard of that. So holy shit, and that, there's been this Epstein death count thing is getting close to like the Clinton death count thing, right? I mean, it's getting up there. We're seeing quite a few deaths now.
Her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
Mr. Trump had also publicly targeted a second Republican who raised concern the president may be blocking the release of the Epstein files.
The president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax, if it's a hoax. And I have another concern about these investigations that he's announced. If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
Representative Massey says he's concerned that the Epstein probe you are calling for could be a smokescreen to block the release of more files. Is that the case?
Well, I don't want to talk about it because fake news like you're a terrible reporter, and fake news like you, they just keep bringing that up to deflect from the tremendous success of the Trump administration. So a guy like Massey, his poll numbers are showing he's at 6% approval rating right now. And we call him Rand Paul Jr. because he never votes for the Republican Party. So they're using Jeffrey Epstein as a deflection from the tremendous success that we're having as a party.
Wow. But here's the thing, Mr. President. is that you ran on that. It just makes it that much more like, here's salt in your eye, here's sand in your eye, because running for president, we heard time and time again how this Epstein deal was going to come to light. These people, these terrible people, we were going to find out who they were and everything. God, I've said this so many times. You know, Pam Bondi and her stack of files on her desk, having to get eye surgery from watching so much video, having to ask for volunteers at the FBI to watch video because you can't assign someone to watch that kind of stuff, right? Minors and disgusting old men. So they had to get volunteers. I mean, this was all said in the news. I'm not making this up. This was said in regular Fox News, CNN. I'm not, you know, this is all stuff that they said. And then all of a sudden, that's it. But they're only releasing parts of it. They're not releasing everything. And they've made it so difficult that these Republicans are going to have to hold a vote Tuesday just to get a legislative order to release additional files. And we don't even know if that's still all the files. This is just so you have to be careful about the words they say. Additional files. So this isn't everything. This is just additional stuff. So stuff that they're willing to tolerate out there to this point. So there might be some couple of surprising things in there, but nothing that we can use to actually hold anyone accountable. It's really frustrating. Okay, this was about 9 hours ago on ABC News, and they're covering the vote coming up on releasing these additional documents.
A critical moment on Capitol Hill this week for lawmakers. The House is expected to vote on releasing the Epstein files. Meanwhile, a feud between President Trump and one of his strongest supporters in Congress is escalating. Senior White House correspondent Selena Wang has the latest.
President Trump escalating his fight with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene as she pushes for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The Georgia Republican, who is once one of Trump's most loyal allies, now says the president's attacks are putting her life in danger, posting in part, "A hotbed of threats against me are being fueled and egged on by the most powerful man in the world. His aggression against me is completely shocking to everyone." In a string of posts on social media over the weekend, the president writing, "I'm withdrawing my support and endorsement of Greene," claiming she betrayed the entire Republican Party, calling her a ranting lunatic and a traitor. Greene in part responding, "He's coming after me hard to make an example to scare all the other Republicans before next week's vote to release the Epstein files." She's one of 4 Republicans who joined Democrats to sign a petition that forces the House to vote to demand the release of the full files on the convicted sex offender.
It seems like very rich and powerful men are being protected.
This weekend's public blowup comes after months of tension. Greene recently criticized the president over his focus on foreign affairs rather than domestic issues, opposed his administration's bailout of Argentina's economy, and blasted Republican leadership during the government shutdown. But Greene says Trump turned on her over the Epstein files.
All right, Selena Wang joins us now, so let's stay on the Epstein files. What are we hearing from lawmakers in the White House ahead of this vote this week?
Yeah, look, Speaker Johnson went to great lengths to try and postpone this vote, but now they have enough votes with that discharge petition to force them to hold this vote. So Speaker Johnson wants to just get this out of the way. That's why they're expected to hold this vote next week. He does not want this hanging over their heads into Thanksgiving. Now, President Trump, for his part, he's also been going to great lengths to try and stop this from happening. Ahead of that final vote to force this to happen, the White House had a meeting in the Situation Room with top top Justice Department officials and White House officials with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert to try and convince her to remove her name from that petition. It did not work. But Perry, it shows just how far the White House is willing to go to try and make this go away. But this vote is expected to happen next week. And GOP co-sponsor of the bill, Thomas Massie, a Republican congressman, he expects there to be some major defections. A significant number of Republicans he expects to break with the president and to vote to release those files. But again, even if it passes the House, it still needs to go through the Senate. Unclear what happens there. And President Trump, of course, is very unlikely to sign on. But regardless, this could send a very powerful message to the president.
It will be fascinating to watch. And what's the latest in this war of words between President Trump and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah, what's really striking here is that Greene used to be one of the president's most loyal supporters in Congress, but we have seen this simmering tension over recent months as Greene has broken with the president on a host of issues. The Georgia Republican has. But she says it's the Epstein files that finally caused the president to turn on her. Take a listen to what she told CNN today.
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files, and I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong. And so I'm standing with the women, and I will continue to do my small part to get the files released.
And Perry, this really public blow up between Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Trump just really underscores how the Epstein files has divided the president's base. And that's what's going to be interesting to watch next week, is just how many Republican defectors are there, because this puts these lawmakers in a very uncomfortable position, because many of their constituents have been demanding transparency after the president, his vice president, and some of his top officials for years had been stoking conspiracies, and the president had promised transparency on the campaign trail. But now that they're in office, they're refusing to release these files. So again, putting Republican lawmakers in a tough position. Do they go with where many of their constituents are, or do they risk breaking with the president?
Selena Wang live in Washington. Selena, thank you.
Wow, very interesting. So, as I said, my theory is President Trump doesn't like to lose, obviously. And if he can be on the winning team, even if it seems like it might be against his own best interest, if he can appear to be on that winning team, the team that's going to get this bill through, then that's a win for him and public perception. So for me, I think obviously they called a senator over to the White House, wined and dined them, and tried to get them to change their mind on voting to release these files. And when that failed, he says, okay, yeah, let's release them. Let's get it out there, because this is a Democratic hoax. It's like Trump 101. He's very good at it. It works. It's effective, and it's how he continues to carry on. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on the war with drug cartels. And I'm going to cover them in just a moment. But first, we've had, in the last couple weeks, we've had the age of disclosure. I know you're rolling your eyes. Some of you are rolling your eyes already. The age of disclosure drop, like 4 or 5 new teasers. My stance is this. I'm not paying $25 to watch more crap about people. These are all people saying the same things they've already said. You understand? Like there's nothing that was recently declassified that they can say. And, I heard a really good point. If a whistleblower is just saying exactly what the government tells them they can say, then that's not really a whistleblower. That's more like a spokesperson. Because whistleblowers, they take the risk in breaking the law because they're saying things they aren't supposed to say. So instead of saying, well, I can't say this because my NDA, they actually say, I'm saying this even though I have an NDA because what's happening here is illegal and wrong. And I'm whistleblowing and I'm willing to risk X, Y, and Z to get this out there because it's wrong. Whistleblowing is not going and saying what you've already said in 5 documentaries. It's just not. So I think maybe it's just a terminology mix-up. I don't know. But that's not whistleblowing. At any rate, we're going to take a look at, they're not very long. They're like 30 to 45 seconds each. We're going to breeze through them, talk about it afterwards, and then I'm going to talk about my thoughts on this Venezuela drug cartel war, and then we'll close it out. And then I think I'm going to hold a new space and play a classic Edward Snowden interview, possibly, if I'm up for it. Okay, so this is the new Age of Disclosure teaser, and like I said, there's 3 or 4 of them. We're gonna check them each out here. Here we go, folks.
We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours.
They have both deactivated and activated nuclear weapons with both the United States and Russia.
These are otherworldly things that are performing maneuvers that haven't been seen.
The UAP activity surrounding nuclear weapons is not a historic issue. It's an ongoing issue.
I spent 20 years working in the U.S. intelligence community.
I worked on highly classified UAP programs for the government as a senior scientist.
We have been discovered by an intelligence from some other part of the universe. They are here. This is real. It's happening. It's happening now.
If I were a species from somewhere else who saw how we were coming up this curve of, atomic energy and nuclear energy, and then beginning to realize what it takes to do their kind of technologies with warping time and warping space and so on. I can imagine that could be seen as a threat to another species because they would recognize that, well, it's only a matter of time and they're going to be doing what we're doing and then we're going to have to deal with them.
So it doesn't surprise me that their highest priority would be to identify what threats they might face and learn everything about them. This pattern of activity seems to me utterly logical. It seems to me to be an extension of the evolutionary process that governs life writ large as we know it, which is self-preservation is number one.
We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours, and we don't know whose it is. That alone, just that statement alone, deserves inquiry, deserves attention.
Rubio and I are aligned 100%. We do not find it acceptable to have unknown aerial phenomenon.
It's just not an issue, at least as of yet, in this country that lends itself to some sort of partisan or ideological divide.
This is the biggest discovery in human history. It has so many beneficial impacts, including clean energy.
This one breakthrough can be the key to interstellar travel.
We can talk more about teleportation.
How can we use these technologies and all the capabilities that might come from it, not to fight a war, but to increase our standard of living?
If the capabilities that exist become known to the world, it might very well be that it is to the benefit of mankind.
Okay, that was it. Those were the 4 new teaser trailers for Age of Disclosure. Um, I I'm sorry, y'all. I used to get so excited about stuff like this until I realized like they're all the same. It's all the same folks. You know, maybe they throw a new guy in or something. But it's mostly the same folks, and they're all saying things they've said before, either in their books or in other interviews. They're not saying anything that's classified. They're not providing any shred of real evidence other than words. It's just words, y'all. That's it. I mean, they're good words. They keep you interested because the idea of it is just insane. And if you're like me, I'm, you know, Generation X, and we were like kind of the last ones to have no internet and grew up playing kick the can with the neighbors. And then as we were like junior high schoolers were slowly introduced to the internet. And so it wasn't like something we had our whole life. And so I'm glad for that. I feel like I would have missed out on certain things in my life. My childhood, especially, had I constantly been sitting in front of a screen. And we try to make sure that's not the case with our little one, just constantly sitting in front of a screen. All right. So I just wanted to share a couple of my thoughts, you know, before I close this space out about this whole war thing. Because if you zoom out, let's just zoom out for a minute, okay? And let's say it's not about drugs, because war on cartels, it sounds like, oh yeah, like war on drugs sounded, right? War on cartels. But what does that mean on a global scale, on a political scale, and really on a human scale? Because these decisions get made at these upper levels, and then the population deals with the consequences. So don't get me wrong, I'm all for getting illegals that are in this country doing bad things, especially, out and fixing that problem. But then you see videos of them like ripping farm workers away from their families, and it breaks your heart. That wasn't exactly what I thought, you know. So we have to zoom out sometimes, because war changes everything. Cartels are criminals, but the moment you label them like a foreign military, the solutions shift from like courtroom, police work, investigative work, to drones, special forces, surveillance, and special operations. And we know President Trump just recently authorized the CIA to operate within Venezuela. The CIA overthrows governments. It's what they do. It's what they've done time after time. And in a war, you don't need evidence. the way that you do in court. You just need a target, as we've seen with these boats, right? There's no real evidence being presented other than the military or someone telling us these boats are full of drugs and videos of them exploding. That's the first red flag that no one talks about. So if we're talking cartels, it's going to pull in Mexico. You can't deal with cartels and not deal with the country that has some of the craziest and most cartel activity in the entire world. Which means that region is going to suffer conflict. A new kind of conflict. And that also means we're looking at war with our next door neighbor. Almost like they had to deal with in Europe back in the day. Now look, I'm not saying like it would be this crazy fight with Mexico, but any U.S. military action south of the border or even in the border states raises sovereignty issues. So then you're talking about alliances. It could possibly escalate violence like we've seen these ICE officers have to deal with, right? As they're doing deportations, now they're dealing with threats against their lives. It's going to fragment cartels into even more chaotic fractions. Sometimes you can't beat the bad, but you can manipulate it, make it less bad. When you have one leader in there that everyone's scared of, that's terrible. But at the end of the day, that might cause less deaths than 10 different factions fighting for that power vacuum that we create. We would never get a clean victory in Mexico. We just wouldn't. It'd be a long, long, grinding conflict, and it would have the potential to really destabilize not just Mexico and us, but other countries as well that do trade with us. And other countries we're going to try to call in for help, right? This is where countries show their allegiance. Are you going to help us on the battlefield? We wouldn't get a clean victory. This isn't Call of Duty. This is like generational geopolitics playing out. And if we're at war with Mexico, and if we're at war with the drug cartels, that's going to increase the security state here at home. Right now, we're being told all these federal troops getting deployed to these cities is because ICE needs support and local law enforcement needs support. But what if there's a motivation behind that? What if we know if we really launch a full-scale war against these cartels, they're going to strike back, and they're going to try to strike back here because we share a border with them. More surveillance, more financial monitoring, more pressure on encryption, more aggressive policing, more border militarization. Every tool built for emergency use only would eventually get used on everyone. We've seen this before. Patriot Act, energy. War on Terror, energy. Mission creep is real. A cartel crisis, a war with the drug cartels, is the perfect political Swiss Army knife. You can justify crackdowns at the border. You can justify military budgets. You can use it to distract from scandals. You can use it to frame opponents as weak on crime or soft on cartels. Almost anything can be sold to the public if you wrap it in the language of fear. That's the dangerous part. And then there's the whole dehumanization thing, which we've already seen happen. I mean, we literally have seen the dehumanization of people happen right before our eyes, especially on social media. When you hear cartel, 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 it becomes really easy to just lump an entire community into that category, which means migrants, border towns, young people from the wrong zip code, ordinary families just trying to live their lives. The whole country could eventually be potential threats if we're not already. And then once people start seeing each other as human, what happens then? Collateral damage happens then. That's what happens then. Things like bombing a target with a drone and then waiting for rescue workers to show up and bombing again. Because it's just like people on a screen. It's not real, right? Wars create shadows, shadow networks, black budgets, unaccountable operations, good criminal groups versus bad criminal groups, intelligence agencies partnering with one enemy to weaken another. When everything happens in the dark, you get entire ecosystems of corruption. And then you protect it all under the blanket of national security. Sound familiar? For those that watch my podcasts, hang out with in my live spaces, chat with me, it sounds very familiar. It's like 9/11. The war on terror gave the military unlimited power and unlimited budget. And people kept wondering, why weren't we catching Osama bin Laden? Because the money was not in the catching Osama bin Laden. The money and the power and the narrative came from chasing Osama bin Laden, which is why it lasted way longer than it should have. Cartels are a problem. They're fucking violent. They're ruthless. They're destructive. But the frame, the language, the strategy, the powers created to fight them carries consequences that are going to ripple far beyond the battlefield. A war on cartels could reshape so many things, y'all. I had to put a bullet list together. U.S.-Mexico relations, immigration policy, surveillance laws, policing, military strategy, political narratives, civil liberties, and even how we view each other as people. This wouldn't just be a war. It would be a doorway. And once we walk through it, you don't get to walk back. Remember, if you remember anything from what I'm saying here tonight, it's never just about the cartels. It's about what the label of war unlocks. And more importantly, who gets to hold the keys? So as you can tell, I'm not a fan. War is awful. War is terrible. War is the worst of man. And it should only be waged when absolutely necessary. And I would challenge you to find any service member that would say differently. Yes, it seems like our military sometimes has the fist of God behind it. But we should only wield that power when we absolutely have to. All right, y'all. I'm going to get off my soapbox. That is our news update for the weekend. I hope you have a great night. And we will see you next time on the Gabriel Speaks podcast.